Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. All right, it's the top of the hour here, so I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Beverly Sartain. My business is Recovery Life Management, and I'm a recovery life coach, and I support soulful men and women in living a sober and conscious and purpose-driven life. So I've been doing these Elevate Your Recovery webinars each month. I'm going to be doing them throughout the rest of the year, and except for December. So we still have August, September, October, and November to go. And so the first Wednesday of each month, I provide a topic, and it's all in support to this notion of elevating your recovery process, of taking your recovery to the next level. And maybe that means going a bit deeper into your process. Maybe that means being of service or doing some purposeful work. So the intention here is really to support you, to challenge you, to provide topics that are very meaningful to your process. And of course, this topic in particular is very important and tends to be a pretty hot topic for people, which is repairing relationships in recovery. So before we jump in, let's just, go over some housekeeping here. So we're going to be, together for the next 45 to 60 minutes. And I just really want to encourage you to let go of any distractions that may be going on for you. So, Facebook, to-do list, maybe, just trying to multitask on something. And the reason I'm sharing this is because, oftentimes we get into this habit of just doing a bunch of things at once and not really being very intentional and directing our energy into what we are doing and to getting the most value out of what we're doing. And I find that when people are really present, that they're able to receive more messages about what's going on for them. And interestingly enough, we're a very distracted society where, it's very much based on how many things can you do at one time. And so just for this next hour, like giving yourself permission to just breathe and just setting aside all the other to-dos and seeing what value you can create for yourself out of being present to some really great information and content, and seeing what comes forward for you as next steps and where your focus needs to be. So I'm going to be going over 3 common misunderstandings when it comes to repairing relationships. And I'm also going to be giving you 3 solutions. So I'm very solution focused. Coaching is very solution focused. I'm really big on staying in the solution versus just sitting in the problem. So we'll talk through some common misunderstandings because I think we can all relate to those. And then I'm, going to knock your socks off with some solutions. One in particular is my favorite solution in recovery. And so I think it's going to be really valuable and important to hear about that one. And at the end of the webinar, I am going to be providing an offer, to the people that are on this call right now. It's a very cool offer that I created. I actually I'm really proud of this offer because I think it's something very unique, very different than what I've provided for people in the past. Also, you might see a chat box here to the side. Feel free to relate. If you have questions, they're really best for the end because I'm going to be focused on being present to myself and sharing the presentation. And I really want to hear your thoughts and your questions and your comments. And so there'll definitely be a time for that at the very end. And I also provided the slides here. Sometimes with the live streaming, the slides can get blurry for people. It just depends on your connection. And the slides are available there for you if things get too blurry and you need to utilize that. So super excited to be here with you. This is actually the first time that I am doing this topic as a webinar, which is kind of saying a lot because I've done many webinars. I've done a lot of work in treatment facilities as a substance abuse counselor. And so clearly we talked about relationships a lot there. But as far as the work that I do around coaching and, you know, the webinars I provide online, I haven't talked about this topic too much. And it's a very near and dear topic to me. And so, you know, you might ask, why am I talking about this topic of repairing relationships in recovery? And there's several reasons that I'm talking about it. You know, first off, I'm somebody who has had very toxic relationships in the past. I just never had a healthy relationship, and just really, you know, fell for people quickly, fell for people in a very hard way, you know, was very codependent in my relationships with people, based a lot of my value off of my relationships with people. And so clearly when I was using substances, I just was having really difficult relationships. And, you know, now that I have 10 years of sobriety that I celebrated this year, you know, looking at the difference in my relationships is pretty profound. And so that's why I'm speaking on the topic as well. You know, I'm also someone who's worked really diligently on repairing my relationships with my family, and relationships around marriage, you know. So I really wanted to create a sober relationship. And I got sober at 26, and I was a little bit concerned at that time, like, okay, how is this going to go down? You know, how am I going to meet somebody and explain to them that I can't have somebody coming home high. I can't have somebody coming home with beer on their breath. Like, I'm just very clear that that's not going to work for me. But I did. I got really clear about what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable. I just knew what would like throw me over the edge at that point, and I just couldn't be around somebody as, you know, an intimate partner that was coming home using substances. And so I very clearly communicated that to the person who's now my husband, and my husband is also sober. And so we've had, you know, a sober relationship from the very beginning of being together. And, you know, at the end of the year, we'll have been together for 9 years now. So, you know, I'm sharing this with you because I want you to know that it is possible to have a sober relationship. And I'm a demonstration of that. And so it's important to know that it's out there, and you can create a sober relationship if that's what you desire. And I'm also talking about this topic because I just know many people suffer around this topic of relationships. I know that a lot of people want to heal their relationships with others very quickly when they are in the recovery process. And so I really think that today you're going to get some very valuable information that's actually going to support you in approaching you know, these relationships in a much better way than without the information. So I'm really glad that you're here. I had a lot of fun putting together this webinar and just, you know, really thinking through relationships and how complex they can be, and just also how amazing they can be when it's a healthy relationship. So I want you to know that if you are somebody who hasn't had very healthy relationships, that can change. That can definitely change. And I feel like, in particular, one of the solutions that I'm going to give you today is really going to support you in having better relationships with people. So, common relationship issues in recovery. This is really fascinating because relationships are pretty dynamic. I mean, there's all different kinds of relationships. And so when I was thinking about the people who might be attending this webinar, I kind of thought through some different scenarios of common relationship issues that I have seen in recovery, also many that I have personally experienced. And so I always want us to think about being inclusive. And what I mean about that is that oftentimes people that have substance abuse issues try to find how they don't belong, try to find ways to not include themselves. And so I really wanted to think through, different relationship scenarios so that you can include yourself in what we're talking about here, instead of using that mechanism that tries to separate yourself. So you might not have all of these, you might not have any of these, and there's something that I don't have on here that you more closely relate to, and that's fine. But find a way to, just include yourself in this topic instead of separating yourself. And I'm pretty sure that you'll know what I mean by that. So here's some different scenarios that I'm sure that you're going to be able to relate to. So, one is getting sober and family, friends, and partner just don't trust me. They think I'm still in my old behaviors and keep accusing me of using. So this is one I used to hear all the time when I worked in treatment. I actually hear it while I'm coaching people too. The family, friends, the social environment are very used to us behaving in a certain way. And so they're just not as on board right away with our new behaviors. They're very used to our old behaviors. So it's very common for people to feel like, they're not trusting me. They're still accusing me of using substances and I'm not. And that can become very frustrating for the person in recovery. So that's something that I see very often. Another one is I'm getting sober, but my partner still uses. So another really big challenge here is people that are married, people that have been in long-term relationships where substance use has been, an active part of the relationship, and one person wants to get clean and sober and the other person does not, and that can be a really difficult situation and is a very common relationship issue that happens in recovery. Getting sober and my behaviors have driven everyone away. So this is what I could definitely relate to. So when you're getting sober and then you're actually realizing like how many people you have either pushed away or how many relationships that you have perhaps lost. For me, one of the consequences of my use was that I lost a really significant intimate partner relationship. And that was one of the catalysts to me changing. So that, oftentimes I see people's relationships have a very profound effect on them. And oftentimes that leads people to want to make a change when they feel like they're going to lose their family, they're going to lose their partner, they're going to lose their children. So that comes up a lot for people. And that's why this topic is so important. Another one is getting sober, but I use relationships to feel good about myself. So I know I shouldn't be in relationship while I'm trying to get myself straight, but I keep falling back into the same old habit of codependency. So a lot of us use relationship to feel good about ourselves. And so then when, you hear people say it's not good to be in relationship when you're starting off in your recovery process, there's a lot of people that have a very hard time with that because they actually use relationship to feel good and feel valued and feel worthy. And so that was kind of an eye-opener to me because I actually had this come up for myself. I told myself I was, going to just work on myself and not be in partnership with anybody. And I kept experiencing myself like creep towards wanting to be in partnership with someone else, and a lot of that was like not wanting to look at my stuff. And also a part of it was that I wanted someone else to take care of or take responsibility for my upset and my suffering. And it felt like that was more manageable with somebody else, or that person could kind of do the work for me. So that was all super eye-opening and a good learning for me. So maybe you can relate to that. And then the getting sober for other people. So this is a very common relationship issue that I hear. This is, I'm going to get sober for my kids. I'm going to get sober for my marriage. I'm going to get sober, because my parents are going to kick me out of the house if I don't. It's very external focused. And I'm not saying that it's not a motivating factor, but as we get to the solutions, I think you're going to understand a bit more that when we put we put the responsibility on external things, that doesn't work well for us. And furthermore, what I see people do with this one is they create more shame and more guilt for themselves when they say, I'm going to get sober for my kids, and then 2 weeks later they're drinking again. And they've communicated to their children, to their family, I'm going to get sober for the kids. And then it's just another big letdown. You're let down, the people around you are let down, and it just creates tremendous shame, which is a very painful experience. And so, it's hard. It's hard when you think, like, aren't my kids enough for me to want to get sober? And it's not really about that. And again, when we get to the solutions here, I think you're going to see, like, there's a deeper work that needs to happen. So I'm going to dive into, 3 misunderstandings that I see that are very common. I like to start off with these misunderstandings because I just think it's helpful to be like, oh yeah, I do that, like to kind of just see how the mind works, and how the mind, tries to set us up in a certain way, but that way is probably not what's most helpful for us. So the first one that I hear a lot of people say is, I don't deserve to be happy because I've put my loved ones through hell or through so much. I hear this a lot from people. I don't deserve to be happy. I've got to just keep beating myself up. I've got to, and then what I see them do is I see them not feeling good about themselves, and then they drink again, or they use drugs again, or some other behavior, right? So this isn't just solely recovery based on substances. It can be any type of behavior. And so this is really counterintuitive to say, I don't deserve to be happy, and somehow that's going to be what's healthiest for yourself and what's healthiest for other people around you. And so this kind of mindset too also really keeps us in victim consciousness. It's something that really keeps us in, like, poor me, or things are so hard for me. And that kind of a mindset, again, it's low energy, it keeps us down, and it really keeps us in that vicious cycle of just judging ourselves, saying we're going to do better, saying it's going to be different. And then next thing we know, we're using our old coping again. And then we feel like crap about ourselves. There's so much shame and guilt coming up. And, this process just doesn't support you in being the healthiest version of yourself. So, you may find that this is something that you thought you were supposed to do, because I hear a lot of people say that. I've done so much to my family, like, how can I walk around being happy? But the truth is that your family needs you to be well. Your family needs you to be happy. Your family needs you to resolve whatever has started the addiction for you in the first place. And that truly is the best gift that you could give them, is resolving this stuff so that you can show up in a better place, and then you can positively affect the people around you. So hopefully that makes sense, that it's counterintuitive to just keep yourself in a bad place and think that that's going to be better for everybody, including yourself. Another thing that is the misunderstanding is that I don't want to lose my relationships, so I've got to do everything in my power to heal these relationships now. So I really see people, the misunderstanding is people jumping into this healing of relationships too quickly. So, right, I don't want to lose these relationships, so what do I need to do to keep them, right? And I get that, like, that's just that love, safety, and belonging kicking in, and that we value these people, and we value the experience we have with them, so we want to have the relationships. But I oftentimes see people so focused on healing their relationships with others that they totally miss the healing relationship with themselves. So there's like so much pressure to heal these relationships fast that, you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense, since your use really impacted these people. And so it's like, there's got to be some time that happens. There's got to be some healing that happens. And this is really that instant gratification that a lot of people that have substance abuse issues have. You know, it's like, oh, I've got, 15 days sober, so I'm going to start healing my relationships now. And that's not a lot of time to really show back up to these people and say, I'm changed, I'm different. Like, let me demonstrate that to you. So you may like just notice that within yourself. Like, I'm really rushing the process. I'm rushing the process, and I need to slow down a little bit, and I need to really evaluate like what's going on for myself. So that then I can eventually work on repairing and healing the relationships, but coming from it from a healthy place, not a needy place, not I need to resolve this right now. And, I need to make these relationships better because I'm going to lose these people. There's consequences for our actions. And a lot of people don't like it when I say that, but when you can really take responsibility for your behavior and recognize like there's consequences for all of the choices that we've made. And I really came to the understanding that like part of the consequences is that some of my relationships were never going to be the same. And I had to be okay with that, because that was part of the aftermath of what I had chosen to do at that time. So just having some compassion for the process, and for like allowing the process to unfold instead of trying to force the process and put a lot of pressure on the process, because the truth is that our choices really impacted the people around us. And so we just have to be mindful of that. The third misunderstanding is I thought that I would get more support from those around me, but it just seems like people are just waiting for me to fail. So I hear this one a lot too. I thought I was going to have more support, or it just seems like everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop, or, people are expecting me to fail. So we have to remember that just because we're doing the work, or just because you've been doing some work on yourself, like that doesn't mean that your loved ones are changed or healed from, the experience that they went through with you. This one happened a lot for people when they came to the treatment facility that I worked at. They were really focused on their change and their growth, but their family was at a totally different place when they got out of treatment. And so it's just a really important thing to understand that just because you feel like you're making changes and you're doing better, and not everybody's going to receive it the way that we think it should be, and we got to be okay with that. Like, we've got to be okay with like people needing their own process with this, which I'll talk about in just a second right here. So those are the three misunderstandings. And now I want to dive into the solutions to repairing relationships. And the first solution to me is the most important. The most important solution is to work on yourself. Work on yourself. So what do I mean by working on yourself? It's reconnecting with yourself, getting to know yourself. What are your needs? What are your wants? What are your, what's your desired state? Meaning, what are your goals? What does it look like to take care of yourself? What are the coping skills that you need? And really, what are your unresolved issues that led you to needing to use substances to escape and avoid and check out? Really important. So working on yourself first. So you're really working on relating to yourself. How do you relate to yourself? When I first started the process, I related to myself in a very negative way. I hated myself. I didn't like looking myself in the mirror. A very negative relationship with myself, and that's what we're talking about here. So as you have the intention to repair your relationships with other people, the first relationship that must be repaired is your relationship with yourself. Like, if you aren't relating to yourself well, then you're not going to show up in your relationships the way that you really want to. So you really want to bring this best version of yourself to your relationships versus bringing a broken version of yourself. And that was a big aha for me, is that I was always approaching relationship giving a lot, but I was also getting a lot. And now I can approach relationship from a really healthy place inside of myself and show up the way that I want to show up. I can set boundaries very easily. I know how to check in with myself and see what my needs are. So, just doing that is really important. So it starts by working on yourself, working on your own connection to yourself. How are you talking to yourself? How are you treating yourself? All of that stuff. So this is where I started. A lot of people ask me, like, how do you have 10 years and you never relapsed? How do you have, 10 years and you never attended meetings? You never went to rehab? It's because I learned a process that I share with people now, and I focused on healing myself. I focused on having a better relationship with myself. And I didn't know how to do that at first. So I had to get guidance from other people, and I created a support system that really served me well. It taught me how to do it, gave me the support I needed, and held me accountable. So if this is not something you know how to do, then make sure to get a support person in place to help you. And I always share, there's many different, support people that are out there. There's therapists, there's coaches, there's mentors, there's sponsors. What's most important is again, to not rely on your family, your partners, your friends. You can rely on those people a little bit, but I oftentimes see people put they have just one person that's their support person, and maybe it's their partner. And so that can get very confusing when you're supposed to be having a relationship with somebody and everything is based on you needing to get help and your healing. So it's very helpful to relationships, when you find that support from somebody that actually, that has the skill set to support you with it. Therapists, coaches, peer support specialists, all these people are trained to support. So if you need any, help in finding the right person, feel free to get in contact with me. And of course, I support people with this too. I've got 2 spots right now for my individual coaching. So just find the right person for you. Find the support. But this is such a critical step that must be taken. This work on yourself, right? And when we don't like ourselves, when we don't have really good confidence or self-esteem, that's all damaged through substance use, right? I had no connection with myself. And so it was a relearning. It was a relearning and sometimes a learning for the first time of how to be compassionate towards myself. I didn't even know what that was. I knew how to do that for other people, but I didn't know how to do it for me. And then I learned self-forgiveness, and so I started to forgive myself around some of these behaviors that had created so much shame for me. So there's learning that happens, you know, to be able to connect with yourself and start to enjoy yourself and love yourself. And that's really when the transformation and magic happens for people. So another solution, you know, and this is pretty straightforward, is just demonstrate your change versus talking about it. You know, demonstrate your change versus talking about it. This is going to be very supportive for your family, friends, partner. Like, people are sick of hearing you talk about the change that you want to make, right? They want to see you demonstrate it. They want to see the difference. They don't want to hear it because they've heard it so many times before. They've heard that you were going to, you know, reduce use or stop using on the weekends, or, you know, they've heard all of these different things. So it's really important to not just talk about stuff, but really walk it, demonstrate it, show your change, be the change that you wish to see, right? So show it. It's always a red flag for me when people just want to talk about, you know, what they're gonna do, and that they might try to do it. I hear try a lot for people that have substance abuse issues. Well, I'll try my best, or, you know, always kind of setting themselves up, you know, for an out, that they really don't have to fully commit. And again, like, people don't want to hear that when they like have been so hurt and impacted by your use. They want to see the changes that you're making, and not for 2 weeks, and not for 30 days, and not for 6 months, you know, like, they want to see a change that's a lasting change. And that's really difficult for people. They want to think like, oh, I went to treatment for 90 days, so everything's different now, you know, and that's really not a long time. That's nothing, you know, nothing compared to a lifetime of using substances. So we got to own that. We got to own, like, hey, this is really not that much time, and I get that. And so I understand why people may be wary of me right now. And so I just got to stay, you know, connected to myself and connected to what I'm focused on, and do right, you know, do right, so I can show people that I'm in my integrity and I'm following through with what I say I'm going to do. That's what people want to see. That's the demonstration. And then the third thing that I briefly started to talk about earlier is giving people the dignity of their own process. I love this paradigm. I can't remember the first time that I heard it. You know, give people the dignity of their own process. Such a beautiful paradigm of, you know, we're all human beings. We're all on our own path. We all have things that we're working on. And so, you know, though you may think that you've got 30 days of sobriety, and other people in your life are just supposed to really accept that and believe in you and know that you're going to change, like, you've got to give the people that you've hurt and that you've impacted the dignity of their own process. They're on their own timeline. They're going through their own process with this. And so it's good to remember that, because we can't have expectations of how people are supposed to receive us in our recovery. Again, we've got to acknowledge that there's some consequences to our behaviors. And so we need to sometimes give people just that space to have their own process with it. So let's talk next steps. So I'm a big next steps person, as many of you know. I'm not as big on hearing information and just being like, oh, that was a great webinar. You know, I learned some things. That's really not important. You know, what is important, that every conversation, every webinar, if you're going to meetings, every meeting, like, whatever you're engaging to support yourself right now, that you take something from whatever that support is and you start implementing it into your life. Like, that's when you're going to see a change. You know, so you really want to take knowledge, you know, content, value, whatever you want to call it. You want to take the knowledge and you want to turn that knowledge into action. So clearly you can't do that with everything that you've heard today, but you can take something that you heard today and either like share it with somebody and have a conversation about it, or journal it, you know, and write down some thoughts about it. It's like there's got to be a deeper engagement that's happening. And I honestly think sometimes that people feel like, oh, if I just show up, or, you know, if I just listen, then, you know, that's enough. And so I've been really successful, not only in my recovery, but just in, you know, in my business and everything that I do, because I'm such a determined person. I'm, you know, I persevere. Like I push beyond just like doing the status quo. Right. And so status quo is not going to get you transformation. We got to like move beyond our comfort zone and really stretch ourselves into some bold action. And, you know, I've seen the biggest changes in my life happen when I take some bold action and stretch myself a bit. So you've gotten some clear direction from the webinar on this inner work piece. You know, inner work is very important. Resolving what's unresolved inside of you, resolving anything that disturbs your peace, learning how to love yourself and have self-compassion towards your experience, learning how to manage your feelings and your thoughts and what to do with them when they come in. All that stuff is inner work. You know, and I certainly didn't know how to do any of that. So I had to find my people. I had to find people that supported me with that process so that I could really like have some dominion, some control over how I was reacting, how I was showing up, you know, and creating my own life, learning how to create my own life, learning how to make decisions and learn from those choices, and then, you know, make new choices, all that stuff. So, you know, you've gotten that clear direction, and, you know that approaching healing relationships is really good when you're demonstrating that change. So those are two like really good key things to think about. You know, I need to have a better relationship with myself so that I can have better relationship with other people. That's really what we're talking about here. How am I going to have really great relationships with other people if I'm not having a good relationship with myself? And that became really apparent to me. Like that was the projection with relationships. I always had bad relationships with people. And the reason I had bad relationships with people is because I didn't have a good relationship with myself. You know, and as I started to learn how to have a better relationship with myself, then I started to see like, wow, my relationship with my mom improves. Wow, my relationship, you know, I meet somebody that I can spend the rest of my life with. You know, all these things started to happen as I started to have a better relationship with myself. So it's very inside out. And I love that paradigm too. You know, inside out. It's not change everything on the outside and think that that's going to make the difference. It's work on yourself on the inside, and then you can make choices about the outside that feel good for you and are, you know, in alignment with the best version of yourself. And that's really, you know, a lasting way to do it. So here's my cool offer. Let me throw up the offer. I'm really excited about this. All right, let's get this. Okay, there we go. Cool. So, you know, you guys know, if you've been following me or coming to any of the webinars, that, you know, there's usually some offering that I give at the end. And I was thinking about this one in particular because I actually had people, you know, emailing me before the webinar and saying, you know, like how connected they are to this topic or what they're working on in regards to this topic. And so I wanted to do something a little bit deeper than just doing like a strategy session, you know, which are fantastic and are very valuable. But I wanted to get like really focused in on something that I think would be helpful to your process. And so I have this letter invitation. It's basically like a template. It's a letter that you can send to whoever you're trying to repair a relationship with. So it could be a child, it could be, you know, like a teenage daughter, or it could be, you know, to your partner, or it could be to, you know, your mom, or whoever you feel like, I need to have a healing conversation with this person. Like, I feel like I've done some work on myself. I feel like I'm ready for this next step to really start to mend some of these relationships. And so I want to start that process. And I know that, like, some of you may still feel like you're at that inner work place, which is fine. You know, it's fine to know, like, I need to do more inner work. I still think that the 60-minute free session would be appropriate, so that once you are ready, that you can then already have the letter and the template. So what I'm going to be doing with people is, you know, it's a free 60-minute session. I'm going to provide you the letter invitation template before we have our session. And then when we're together, we're going to run through it. I'm going to coach you and support you around, you know, making that letter invitation the best it can be, so that you can set yourself up to have a really beautiful healing conversation with a loved one. And I've only got 3 spots available. So if you were on my last webinar, I had 5 spots. And actually all 5 spots got taken within the 24 hours. So if you are feeling like this is something unique and it's different, and you really feel like it could be helpful to you to start to get these healing conversations going, I highly recommend signing up for one of these. And you're going to get the free template with it. And if I get more people wanting this, I'm considering doing like a 2-hour workshop where I go over the letter invitation template. People get to share about their experience. And then I give you a healing conversations format, so that you can kind of know, like, okay, once I've sent them the letter and they said that they will have a conversation with me, how do I have a healing conversation? Like, what would that look like? So I've got a format for that too. So again, if I get like a good response here, I'm going to put together a 2-hour workshop. You know, it would be like a super inexpensive thing of like $25 or something like that. But claim, you know, these spots now, because these are free. You get the template, and we'll do a session together and craft a letter that you can send to a loved one, so you can start working on that process of reconnecting with people. So yeah, so that's that. Really cool offer, something very different than just like a regular old strategy session. Very focused on supporting you in crafting a letter that, you know, because a lot of times people in recovery, I know I had this too, like when you're not connected to yourself, then you don't know how to communicate very well, you know? And so it's a great big support to have support in how you're communicating things to people, and the people around you want to know like what you're doing in your recovery. They want to know, you know, are you doing well and all that stuff. So it is important to communicate that. So just take a moment for yourself to think about, what is your takeaway from what we talked about. So we had the 3 misunderstandings, and then we had the 3 solutions that we talked through. You know, so again, you don't want to just tell yourself that you need to keep beating yourself up. That's definitely a big misunderstanding. And you know, just remembering that people, they need some time. That even though you have really started to do some of your change work, like that not everybody else is doing work on themselves. And so that's a good thing to remember, is that not everybody's doing that work on themselves. And solution-wise, you know, one of my favorite ones is doing the inner work is really important. And then, you know, another favorite of mine is just, you know, that paradigm of giving people the dignity of their process is important to remember. So just acknowledging like any takeaway you have for yourself right now. And then let me know if you guys have any questions. So feel free in the chat box to, you know, any comments that you have, any questions, anything that you'd like to share. I always like to hear from you. I've got a picture here of my little puppies. So on the right is Peanut. She is the white one. And then we've got a new little puppy to the left. His name is Ziggy. And we just got him about 3 weeks ago. And they're both sitting on my lap. So they're snuggling, which is super cute. So I would love to hear any feedback you have, any thoughts. Hey guys. Anybody have any thoughts or anything that they want to share? Really important topic, you know, and just really want you to remember to connect with yourself. Connect with yourself, you know, rebuild your relationship with yourself so that you can have the strongest relationship with other people that would be possible. But our relationships are not good with other people when we don't have a very good relationship with ourselves. So it's a very good place to start when people are working on themselves. All right, lovelies, if there's no other thoughts or questions, comments, then we will hop off. So just give it a few more seconds. Oh yeah, and as far as the offer is concerned too, I just want people to know that whether we've coached together before, if you've done a strategy call before, you know, that this is available to anybody that wants to do it. So, you know, I know sometimes people feel like, oh, I've already gotten support. Like if this support speaks to you and you want it, like please take it. Like I create these offers because I want people to utilize them. And so if you feel called to take it, go for it. All right, well, I don't see any questions or comments. I know people are going to be listening to the replay, and so feel free if you listen to the replay to respond and just let me know if you have any questions or comments. I'm happy to support you. Much love to you guys, and we'll see you next month for the next Elevate Recovery meeting. And these webinars, again, are the first Wednesday of each month. If you have signed up for the webinar in the past, you will receive login information in the future. So it's a series, and so once you register one time, it sends you the webinar links for each of the months. And again, you don't have to come every month. You can if you want. If the topic speaks to you and feels like it's something that would be supportive to you in your recovery, then by all means, come and show up and share and participate. But if it's not something that speaks to you, then no worries. You don't have to come. And, you know, just if you ever see a topic and you feel like, wow, this would be really supportive to somebody I know, like, please share the information. You know, we are all connectors. We are all supporting one another in a bigger picture, in a bigger way. So if you see a topic that you're like, yeah, that doesn't resonate for me, but I know Susie Q would be a great fit for this, pass it along. You know, I'm a big proponent of connecting people to the right resources for them. Cool, guys. I really enjoyed being with you today, and I hope you have a beautiful evening. Bye.